So, good morning. I'm Stephanie Galope Alep, studying at Central Zone State University. So, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Chanel Lorraine and
Saan ka nag-aaral?
Balayang High School.
So, yung gagawin natin ngayon is i-observe ko yung reading comprehension mo. And so, before we start, basahin ko muna yung objectives. So, number 1 is to identify, at the end of the lesson, the student will be able to identify the tone, mood, technique, and purpose of defense, which is yung story na babasahin natin mamaya, by analyzing key details in the story. So, next one is this to express their feelings and thoughts on the store's themes such as forgiveness o yung pagpapatawaran and isolation or also known as separation. And last one is create a visual presentation such as a concept map or storyboard to illustrate the tone, mood, technique, and purpose of defense. So, let's start with the short review. Diba pinag-aralan niyo naman na last time yung literary devices? Like yung simile, metaphor, personification, onomatopoeia. So, nag-prepare ako ng isang activity for short review. And, i-identify mo lang siya, yung sentence, whether if it is personification, simile, onomatopoeia, metaphor, ganon. Just need to fill in the blanks. You can read it muna first.
The stars winked at me as I walked home in the quiet night.
So, what's the answer? Personification. Correct.
Personification.
So, the next one.
Her smile was as bright as the sun on a summer day.
What's the answer?
Simile.
Right, tama. The next one, number 3.
Boom. Boom. The thunder rolled across the sky like a mighty drum. Onomatopoeia and simile.
Right, tama.
Time is a thief that steals our best moment.
Right, tama. Metaphor.
The leaves dance in the wind as the autumn breeze whispered through the trees.
So, what's the answer?
Personification.
Thank you so much. So, before we proceed, let me introduce first what is the lesson purpose of our discussion for today. So, the purpose of this lesson is to strengthen students' reading comprehension skills, yung reading comprehension mo, by building on the previous topic. The topic which is to explain the literary devices. So in this lesson, the student will apply their knowledge of identifying the main idea, recognizing supporting details, and making inferences to enhance their understanding of a given text through guided reading and analysis. They will practice selecting relevant details that support the main idea and interpreting implied meanings within the passage. So additionally, this lesson serves as a bridge to the next topic, which is entitled Determining Tone, Mood, Technique, and Purpose of the Author, by helping students recognize how key details contribute an author's overall message and writing style. So before we proceed to the main activity, let us unlock your vocabulary content. So I also prepare an activity here, which is iaano mo siya, naka-disarrange siya, naka-scramble siya, i-unscramble mo lang using the which is the clue, which is the meaning of the word. So number 1 is a collection of images or scenes combined to create a whole. So what do you think the answer for this Number 1. A collection of images or scenes combined to create a whole. So what's the answer?
Montage.
Right, correct. So the next one is shortened by cutting off a part. What do you think the answer? So what's that?
Truncated.
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 Right. So the next one, which is the number 3, is to hide or keep something secret. What do you think the answer? Right, tama. Conceal. So the next one is having superior strength, influence, or authority. Tama. Predominant. So the last one is accepting something reluctantly but without protest. What do you think the answer? Alright, you got it all. Thank you. So, for our main activity, which is we will going to read this story. Pero ako muna magbabasa before you. Ako muna magbabasa per paragraph, tas ikaw naman magbabasa. Aloud Nakasan na rin. So this activity story titled The Fence by Jose Garcia Villa. So the first paragraph. They should have stood apart away from each other, those two nipa houses. There should have been a lofty, impenetrable wall between them, so that they should not stare so coldly, so starkly at each other, just staring, not saying a word, not even a cruel word. Only a yard of parched soil separated them, a yard of brittle crusted earth, with only stray weed or two to show there was life still its bottom.
They stood there on the roadside.
They should
They should
have they should have stood apart,
They should have
stood apart,
stood apart on the roadside.
away from each other. The next one, ito muna. The first paragraph first.
They should have stood apart, away from each other, those two nipa houses. There should have been a lofty, impenetrable was between them,
Wall between them.
wall between them, so that they should not stare so coldly, so starkly at each other, just staring, not saying a word, not even a cruel word, only a yard or parched soil separated them, a yard of brittle
Crusted
crushed
earth.
earth, and only stay with or two to show there was life still in its bosom.
Bosom. The next paragraph. Pakinggan mo ako. They stood there on the roadside, they two alone, neighborless, but for themselves. And they were like two stealthy shadows, each avid to betray to other. Here old houses, so brown were the nipa leaves that walled and roofed them that they looked musty and gloomy. One higher than the other, pyramid roofed, it tried to assume the air of mastery, but in vain. For though the other was low, wind bent, supported without by luteous bamboo, poles against the aggressiveness of the weather. It had its eyes to stare back as haughtily as the other windows, as desolated as the souls of the occupants of the house, as sharply angular as the intensity of their hatred. From the road, these houses feared no enemy from the length, from the dust of the road. They were unfenced, but of each other they were afraid. There ran a green, house-high bamboo fence through the narrow ribbon of thirsty earth between them, proclaiming that one side belonged to one house, to it alone, the other side to the another, and to it alone. Ito naman.
They stood there on the roadside, they two alone,
Neighborless,
neighborless, but for themselves, and they were like two
stealth, stealthy shadows,
stealthy shadows, each each other,
each avid,
each avid to betray the other. Queer old houses, so brown, where the nipa lives that walled and roofed them, that they look musty, gloomy, one higher than the other. Pyramid roof. In try they assume the air of mastery, but in the vain. For tooth, for
for
thought,
thou,
for though the other was low, wine bent, supported without the
luteus,
luteus bamboo poles against the aggressiveness of the weather. It had its eyes to stare back at
haughtily,
haughtily as the other windows, as desolate, desolate as the souls of the occupants of the house, as sharply angular, and as the intensity of their hatred. From the road, those houses feared no enemy. From the length, from the dust of the road, they were unfenced, but of each other they were afraid. There ran a green house-size bamboo fence through the narrow ribbon of thirsty earth between them, proclaiming that one side belonged to one house, to it alone, the other side to the other, and it alone.
So the next one. Formerly, there had been no bamboo fence. There had been no weeds. There had been 2 rows of vegetables, one to each house, and the soil was not parched, but soft and rich. But something had happened and the fence came to be built. And the vegetables that were so green began to turn pale, then paler and yellow and brown. Those of each house would not water their plants, for if they did, would not the water their water spread to the other side and quench to the thirst of that chives and mustards not theirs. Little by little, the plants had died. The soil had cracked with neglect on both sides of the fence. Ikaw naman.
Formerly, there had been no bamboo fence. There had been no weeds. There had been 2 rows of vegetables, one of each house, and the soil was not parched, but soft and rich. But something had happened, and fence came to be built, and the vegetables that were so green began to turn pale.
Began,
Began
began,
to the turn pale, then paler, and yellow and brown. Those each of houses would not water their plants, for if they did, would that water their water spread to the other side and quench to the thirst of pet chives and mustard not theirs. Little by little the plants had died.
Mm-mm.
The soil and cracked with the neglect on the both sides of the fence.
Let's go to the next one. 2 women had built that fence. 2 tanned country women. One of them had caught their husband with the other one night. And the next morning, she had gone to the bamboo clumps near the river Pasig and felled canes with her woman's strength. She left her baby son at home, heeded not the little cries, and one by one, that hot afternoon, she shouldered the canes to her home. She was tired, very tired, yet that night she could not sleep. When morning dawned, she rose and went back at the back of the house and began to split the bamboos. Her husband noticed her, but said nothing by noon. Aling Biang was driving tall bamboo splits into the narrow ribbon of the yard. Pock, pock, pock sounded her crude hammer. Pock, 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 pock. When her husband asked her what she was doing, she answered, I'm building a fence. What for? He asked. I need a fence. And then, two, even Aling Sebia, the other woman, a childless widow, asked inoffensively, What are you doing, Aling Biang? I'm building a fence. What for? I need a fence, Aling Sebia. Please do not talk to me again.
Two women had built that fence. Two tanned countrywomen,
Women.
One of them had caught her husband with the other one night, and the next morning she had gone to the bamboo clumps near the
Near.
river Pasig,
Near.
near the river Pasig, and felled canes with her woman's strength. She left her baby son at home. He dead, not the little cries. And one by one that afternoon she shouldered the canes to
To her home.
her home. She was tired, very tired. Yet that night she could not sleep. When morning dawned, she rose, went back at back of of
The house.
the house and
Began.
began to split the bamboos. Her husband noticed her, but said nothing. By noon, Aling Biang was driving tall bamboo splits into the narrow ribbon of yard. Pock, 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 sounded her crude hammer. Pock, 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 pock. When her husband asked her what she was doing, she answered, I am building a fence. What for? He asked. I need a fence. And then, to even Aling Sylvia, the other woman, a childless widow, asked inoffensively, what are you doing, Aling Biang? I am building a fence. What for? I need a fence, Aling Sylvia. Please do not talk to me again.
Thank you. So the next one. And with that, Aling Sabia had felt hurt. Out of spite, she too had gone to the bamboo clumps to fell canes. After she had split them, tried though she was, she began to thrust them into the ground, on the same straight line as Aling Biang's, but from the opposite end. The building of the fence progressed from the opposite end. The building of the fence progresses from the ends centerward. Aling Biang drove in the last split, and the fence completed, oily perspiration wetting the brows of the two young women. They gazed pridefully at the majestic wall of green that now separated them.
And with that Aling Sylvia had felt hurt. Out of out of spite, she too had gone to the bamboo clumps to fell canes. After she had split them, tried to though she was, she began the thrust them into the ground on the same straight line as Aling Biang's, but from the opposite end. The building of the fence progressed from the opposite end. The building of the fence progresses from the end centerward. Aling Biang drove in the last split, and the fence complete oily
Completed.
oily
Oily.
oily perspiration wetting the brows of two young women. They gazed pridefully at the majestic wall of green of
That now.
of green that now separated them.
Not long after the completion of the fence, Aling Biang's husband disappeared and never came back. Aling Biang took the matter passively and made no effort to find him. She had become a hardened woman, The friends hid all the happenings in each house from those who lived in the other. The other side was to each of beyond, dark in elemental prejudice, and no one dared encroach on it. So the months passed, and each woman lived as though the other were non existent.
Not long after the
Completion.
completion of the fence, Aling Biang's husband disappeared and never came back. Aling Biang took the matter passively and made no effort to find him. She had become
Become
become a
hardened,
hearted woman.
hardened.
Hardened woman. The friends hid all the happening in each house from those who lived in the other. The other side was to each a beyond, dark in elemental prejudice,
Prejudice.
and no one dared
Encroach.
encroach on it. So the months the, so, so the months passed, and each woman lived as thought the
Though.
other though the other were non-existent.
So, but early one night, from beyond the fence, Aling Biang heard cries from Aling Sylvia, unwilling to pay any heed to them. She extinguished the light of the petrol kinki and laid herself down beside her child. But, in spite of all, the cries of the other woman made her uneasy. She stood up, went to the window that faced the fence, and cried from there, "What is the matter with you, Aling Sylvia?"
But early one night, from beyond the fence, Aling Biang heard cries from Aling Sibia. Unwilling to pay any heed to them, she extinguished she extinguished the light of the petrol
Kinky.
kinky and laid herself down beside her child. But in the spite of all, the cries of the other woman made her uneasy. She stood up, went to the windows that faced the fence, and cried from there, "What is the matter with you, Aling Sibia?"
So faintly from the other side came, "Aling Biang, please go to the town and get me a hilot," or what they called midwife. "What do you need a hilot for?" asked Aling Biang. "I'm going to deliver a child, Aling Biang, and I am alone. Please go fetch a hilot." So Aling Biang stood there by the window a long time. She knew when child it was that was coming as the child of Aling Sibia. She stood motionless, the wind brushing her face coldly. What did she care of Aling Sibia was to undergo childbirth. The wind blew colder and pierced the thinness of her shirt. She decided to lie down and sleep. Her body struck against her child's. As she did so, the child moaned. The other child too, could be moaning like that, like like her child, from the womb of Aling Sibia, the wrong womb. Hastily, Aling Biang stood up, wound her tapis around her waist, covered her shoulders with a sheep shawl. The cry that called her, the cry of a life. She descended the bamboo steps. They creaked in the night.
Faintly from the other side came Aling Biang. "Please go to the town and get me a
Hilot.
hilot." "What do you need a hilot for?" asked Aling Biang. "I am going to deliver a child, Aling Biang. I am alone. Please go fetch a hilot." Aling Biang stood there by the window a long time. She knew when child it was that was coming in the as the child of Aling Sibia. She stood motionless, the wind
Brushing.
brushing her face coldly. What did she care of Aling Sibia? was to undergo childbirth. The wind blew.
The wind
The wind blew, blew colder and pierced the thinness of her shirt. She decided to lie down and sleep, her body struck against her child. As she did so, and the child moaned, um, the other child too could be moaning like that, like her child, from the womb of Aling Sibia, the wrong womb. Hastily, Aling Biang stood up, wound her tapis round her waist, covered her shoulders with a cheap shawl. The cry that called her the cry of a life. She descended.
she descended.
She descended the bamboo steps. They reeked in the night.
They creaked.
They creaked in the night.
The fence grew moldly and inclined to one side. The child of Aling Biang grew up into sickly boy with hollow dark eyes and shaggy hair. And the child that was born to Aling Sibia grew up into a girl with rugged features, a simian face, and a very narrow brow. But not a word had passed across the fence since that night.
The fence grew moldly and inclined no one side. The child of Aling Biang grew up into sickly boy with hollow dark eyes and shaggy hair. And the child that was born to Aling Sibia grew up into a girl with rugged
Pictures,
features,
pictures.
a simian face, and very narrow brow. But not a word had passed across the fence since that night.
So the boy Iking was not allowed to play by the roadside, for if he did, would he not know what were on the other side of the fence? For his realm, he had only his home and a little backyard. Sometimes he would loiter along the narrow strip of yard beside the fence and peep surreptitiously through the slits, and he could catch glimpses of a girl, dark complex, ironed, flat nosed on the other side. She was an ugly girl, even uglier than he was, but he was full muscled, healthy. As he peeped, his body like a thin reed pressed against the fungus case would be breathless. The flat-nosed girl intoxicated him, his loose architecture of a body, so that it vibrated cruelly with the leap in his blood. The least sound of the wind against the nipa wall of their house would startle him, as though he had been caught surprise in his clandestine passion. A wave of a frigid coldness would start in his chest and expand until he was all cold and shivering. Watching the girl only intensified his loneliness, watching that girl of whom he knew nothing except that for them it was not right to know each other.
The boy Iking was not allowed to play by the roadside, for if he did, would he not know where on the other side of the fence? For his thrill, he had only his home of the little backyard. Sometimes he would loiter along the narrow strip of yard beside the fence and peep surreptitiously through the slits, and he would catch glimpses of a girl dark complex on flat nose on the other side. She was the ugly girl, even uglier than he was, but she was full muscular, healthy. He peeped his body like a thin rig breast. against the fungus canes would be
Breathless.
breathless. The flat nose girl intoxicated him. His loose architecture of a body so that it pulsed, vibrated cruelly with the clip in his blood. The least sound of the wind against the wind against and winds against the nipa wall of their house would startle him, as thought he had been caught surprise in his clandestine clan-
Clandestine.
passion clandestine passion. A wave of frig, coldness would start in his chest and expand until he was all cold and shivering. Watching that girl only intensified his loneliness. Watching that girl for whom he knew nothing expect that form them it was not right to show each other. When his mother caught him peeping, would scold him, and he would turn quickly about, his convex but pressed painfully against the fence. Did I not tell you never to peep? Should the fence go up?
And he would go up without answering a word. Because the moment he tried to reason out things, prolonged cough would seize him and shake his thin body unmercifully. At night, as he lay on the bamboo floor, notes of a guitar would reach his ears. The notes were metallic, plunking, and at the middle of the nocturne, they stopped abruptly. Who played the raucous notes? Who played the only music he had ever heard in his life? And why did the player never finish his music? And lying beside his mother, he felt he wanted to rise and go down the bamboo steps to the old forbidden fence and see who it was that was playing. But Aling Biang would steer and ask, "Are you feeling cold, Iking?" Here is the blanket. Poor mother, he did not know that it was she who was making the soul of this boy so cold, so barren, so desolate.
And one night, after Aling Biang had prepared, and he would, and one night after Aling Biang had prepared his bidding beside her, Iking approached her and said, "I will sleep by the door, Nanay. I want to sleep alone. I am grown up. I am 15." He folded his mat and tucked in the underarm, carrying a condemned case pillow in the hand, and marched stoically to the place he
Saan na yan?
mentioned. Stoically, he mentioned when the playing came. He stood up and went down the stairs and moved towards the bamboo fence. He leaned against it and listened
And trailed.
to the music. When it
When it ceased,
he wanted to scream in protest, but
struggling
struggling
cough
cough
seized him.
seized him. He
Choke,
choked, yet his
neck, craned.
and his eyes strained to see who had been the player. His lips did not move, but his soul wept. It is she, and he
Wanted
wanted to hurl
himself.
himself against fence to break it down.
Fence.
Fence. to break it down, but he knew the even that even that old wild wild
Mildewed.
mildew fence was stronger than the loneliness of his soul, stronger than his soul itself.
Pock, 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 pock. The boy, aching pallid, tubercular, watched his mother with sunken, hating eyes from the window. She was mending the fence because now it leaned to the other side and many of the old stakes had decayed. The substitute fresh once for this until finally, among the weather-beaten ones, rose bold green splits like stout corporals among squads of unhealthy soldiers. From the window, the boy aching asked nervously, why do you do that, mother? Why? It needs reinforcing, replied his mother. Pock, pock, pock. Why? He explained this in protest. His mother stopped hammering. She stared at him cruelly. I need it, she declared forcefully, the veins on her forehead rising out clearly. Your mother needs it. You need it too. Eking cowered from the window. He heard again, pock, 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 pock. That night, no plane came from beyond the fence, and Eking knew why. The boy Eking.
The boy aching, pallid, tubercular, watched
Tubercular.
tubercular,
Tubercular.
watched his mother with with sunken, hating eyes from the windows. She was mending the fence because now it leaned to out to their side, and many of the old stakes had decayed. She substitute fresh. Once for this until finally, among the beaten ones, rose balls, rose ball green, splits like stout corpulars among squads of unhealthy soldiers.
Soldiers.
Soldiers,
Soldiers.
soldiers. From the window, the boy aching asked nervously, "Why do you that, mother? Why? It needs reinforcing, replied his mother. Pock, pock, pock. Why? He claimed in protest. His mother stopped hammering. She stared at him cruelly. I need it, she declared forcefully. The
The veins.
the veins on her forehead rising out clearly. Your mother needs it. You need it too. Aching cowered from the windows. He heard again pock, 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 pock. That night no playing came from beyond the fence and Aching knew why.
So 18-year-old Bonnie Peking, lying ghastly, pale on the mat all the time, waiting for the music from the other side of the fence that had stopped 3 years ago. And tonight was Christmas Eve. Eking's Christmas Eve. He must be happy tonight. He must be made happy tonight. At one corner of the room, his mother crooned to herself. A Biblia was on the table, but no one read it. They did not know how to read. But they knew it was Christmas Eve. Aling Biang said, "The Lord will be born tonight." "The Lord will be born tonight," echoed her son. "Let us pray, Iking." Iking stood up. His emaciated form looked so pitiful that his mother said, "Better lie down again, Iking. I will pray alone." But Iking did not lie down. He moved slowly to the door and descended into the backyard. His mother would pray. Could she pray? His soul asked. He stood motionless, and then he saw the fence that his mother had built and strengthened to crush his soul. He ran weakly, groggily, to it, allured by its forbidding, crushing sternness. He peeped hungrily between the splits, saw her. His dry lips mumbled, tried to make her hear his word. Play for me tonight. He saw that she heard. Her ugly face turned sharply to the fence that separated him and her. He wept, he wept, he had spoken to her the first time.
18-year-old Bonnie Eakin, lying ghastly, pale at, on the mat all the time, waiting for the music from the other side of the fence that had stopped 3 years ago. And tonight was Christmas Eve, Eaking's Christmas Eve. He must be happy tonight. He must be made happy tonight. At one corner of the room, his mother crooned to herself. A Biblia was on the table, but no one read it. They did not know how to read, but they knew it was Christmas Eve. Aling Biang said, "The Lord will be born tonight. The Lord will be born tonight," echoed, echoed her son. Let us pray, Eking. I was stood up.
Eking stood up.
Eking stood up. His emaciated from look so pitiful that his mother emaciated from look so pitiful that his mother said, "Better lie down again, Eking. I will pray alone." But Eking did not lie down. He moved slowly to the door and descended into the backyard. His mother would pray. Could she pray? His soul asked. He stood motionless, and then he saw the fence that his mother had built and strengthened to crush his soul. He ran weakly, groggily to it, allured by its forbidding, crushing sternness. He peeped hungrily, but between the split, saw her. His dry lip tried to make her hear his word. Play for me tonight. He saw that she heard her ugly face turn sharply to the fence that separated him and her. He wept. He had spoken to the first time.
He laid himself down as soon as he was back in the house. He turned his face toward the window to wait for her music. He drew his blanket closer around him so that he should not feel cold. The moonlight that poured into the room pointed at his face, livid, anxious, hoping, and at a little wet red smudge on the blanket where it touched his lips. Cicadas sang and leaves of trees rustled. A gorgeous moon sailed westward across the sky. Dark-skinned bats occasionally lost their way into the room. A pale silken moth flew in to flirt with the flame of kerosene kinke. And then the cicadas had tired of singing. The moon was far above at its zenith now. The bats had found their way out of the room. The moth now lay signed on the table. Beside, he realized now that the fence between their houses extended into the heart of this girl. "The Lord is born," announced Aling Yang. "For it was midnight, he was born," said her son, his ears still ready for her music because the fence did not run through his soul. The moon descended at 2 a.m. Iking's eyes were closed and his hands were cold. Her mother wept. His heart beat no more. 2:03 a.m. Only a few minutes after, and from beyond the fence came the notes of a guitar. The notes of a guitar, metallic, clunking, raucous notes of the same guitar. And she who played it finished her nocturne that morn. Aling Biang stood up from beside her her son, approached the window, stared accusingly outside, and said in a low, resentful voice, "They are mocking. Who would play at such a time of a morn as this, because my son is dead?" She, but she now, but she saw only the fence she had built and strengthened, stately white in the matutinal moonlight.
He laid, he laid himself down as soon as he was back in the house. He turned his face toward the window to wait for her music. He drew he drew his blanket closer round him so that he should not feel cold. The moonlight the porch
Poured
poured into the room, pointed at his face, livid, anxious, hoping, and at a little wet red smudge on the blanket
where
where it touched his lips. Cicadas.
Kadasang
Cicadas sang and leaves of trees rusted. A gorgeous moon sailed westward across the sky. Dark skinned but occasionally lost their way into the room. A pale silken
moth,
moth, moth,
moth,
moth flew into the flirt, and the flame kerosene kinky. And then the cicadas had tired of singing. The moon was far above it. It is
zenith.
zenith now. The bat the bats had found their way out of the room. The moth now lay sighing on the table. Beside he realized now that the fence between their houses extended into the heart of this girl. The Lord is born, announced Alimbia, for it was midnight. He is born, said her son, his, his, his ears still ready for her music because offense did not run through
True.
through his soul. The moon descended, and 2 a.m. Iking's eyes were closed and his hands were cold. His mother wept. His heart beat no more. 2:03 a.m. Only a few minutes after, and from beyond the fence came the months after a guitar. The notes of guitar metallic, clanking, raucous notes of the same guitar, and she would play it finish her nocturne that morning. Aling Biang stood up from beside her son, approached the window, stared accusingly outside, and said in a low, resentful voice, "They're the mocking.
They are mocking.
They are mocking. Who would play at such a time of mourn of this? Because my son is dead." But she saw only the fence she had built, strengthened, stately white in the matutinal matutinal moonlight.
So, thank you. Natapos na natin. So, sa story ito, it's all about lang sa magkapitbahay, which is si Aling Biang tsaka si Aling Sibya. Okay naman sila nung una, pero nangyari lang yung hatred, yung separation nila sa isa't isa nung nag-cheat yung asawa ni Aling Biang sa kanya, doon sa kay Aling Sibya. Tapos yun, nag-cheat siya. Tapos yun, biglang isang araw, nag-build sila ng fence. Si Aling Biang nagsimula, tapos ganoon din si Aling Sabia. Nag-build sila ng fence between sa bahay nila. Since yun lang yung bahay dun sa place nila. Silang dalawa lang. Tapos one time, sa Aling Sibya, humihingi ng tulong. Since wala nga siyang kapitbahay, sa Aling Sibya, tumulong siya. Yung una, nag-hesitate siyang tumulong since alam niyang sa asawa niya yung yung ginadala ni Aling Sibya. Tapos nung tumagal, yun nga, may sakit nga yung anak ni Aling Sibya, which is si Iking. Tapos si Aling Biang pala, anak na Aling Biang si Iking. Tapos si Aling Sabya naman yung babae na tumutugtog. Yun yung nagpaparelate kay Iking para gumaan yung pakiramdam niya kasi nga sakitin siya. Tapos hanggang dun sa huli, hindi rin nagpatawad si Aling Biang. Kaya, diba, sabi niya, nung namatay na si Iking, sino pa daw nagpapatugtog ng ganitong oras, patay na yung anak niya. Kaya hanggang sa huli, hindi sila nagpatawad sa isa't isa. May galit pa rin sila. Tapos may separate pa din yung, may separation pa rin between sa bahay nila. Tsaka sa bahay nilang dalawa, which is yung bamboo fence. Yan. So, since natapos na natin yung story, meron pa tayong actually 3 pang activity which is for our explicitation. So, dito, sasabihin ko na lang kung sino yung tatanungin na lang kita kung sino yung sabihin ko na lang yung question tapos sasagutin mo na lang. So, who are the main characters in Defense? So, sino yung mga pangunahing tauhan sa Defense na binasa natin?
Aling Biang.
Sino pa? Aling Biang.
Aling Sibya.
Sino pa?
Anak ni Aling Biang. Iki. Anak ni Aling Sibya.
Alright. So, the next one is, what does the fence symbolize in the story? Ano yung sinisimbolo ng bakod, yung bamboo, sa bagay ng bahay nila? Sa kwento.
Nag-symbolize ito ng separation, sama ng loob nila toward each other.
Diba? Nakita naman natin na galit sila sa isa't isa, kaya siguro yun yung naging simbolo ng fence, yung hatred towards to each other. So next question is, what lesson can we apply in real life from this story? Ano yung lesson na pwede mong apply sa real life here?
Matutong magpatawad kasi nagkakos ng pain ang sama ng loob.
Yeah. That's right. So, sa tingin mo saan naganap yung kwento? Since nabanggit yung Pasig River doon. Sa tingin mo saan yun?
Siguro one of the rural village.
Oo.
In
Here in the Philippines.
Here in the Philippines, since may bamboo and nabanggit din yung Pasig River.
Feel ko din. Sa rural area siya dito sa Philippines. So, the last question. What lesson does the story teach us about anger and forgiveness? Anong aral ang itinuro ng kwento tungkol sa galit at pagpapatawad?
Ang patatago ng galit at sama ng loob ay nagdadala lang sa atin ng separation at suffering.
Right. So, the next one is yung sa work example natin. So, in here, after reading Offense by Jose Garcia Villa, magko-compose ka ng reflection about forgiveness and isolation. Tapos, isusulat mo siya sa, kahit dito na lang din.
Five and 7.
Bigyan kita ng 2 minutes para mag-construct ng salita. Parang reflection lang siya about dun sa forgiveness tsaka separation nila towards each other. So next one is for our last activity. So this activity, the student will complete a simple chart to analyze the fence by Jose Garcia Villa. In the chart below, the student will fill the required details about based on his understanding, your understanding. So these are the elements: the tone, mood, technique, purpose of the author. Just only have 2 minutes to answer it. Yan mo na lang answer. So for the tone, what is the author's attitude in the story? What do you think? So sa mood, how does the story make you feel? So, sa pangalawa, technique. So, what literary devices is used? Like, pwede siyang symbolism or imagery, ganun. That's for technique. So last one is what is the purpose or the message of our lesson does the story teach us? Okay, thank you. I-check ko to later. So for our last activity, it's our takeaways na lang. So under the column, draw the following emojis that represents how you feel about each statement. So kung very confident ka, ito yung i-draw mo. Tapos kapag fairly confident ka, ito. Tapos not so confident, tsaka not confident at all. So, basahin mo muna, tapos bago mo i-draw. Nakasan mo.
I can identify the tone, mood, technique, and purpose of the fence.
Wow, very confident. So the next one.
I can share my thoughts and feeling about the
Teams.
of forgiveness and isolation.
Yan. Fairly confident. I can create a visual representation to show my understanding of the story. Ano siya? For you. Nakakapag-create ka na ba ng visual like yung ginawa natin dun sa lesson activity natin kanina?
Sa pag-aaway?
No? Yung ito kanina. Ito. Naintindihan mo ba siya ng mabuti? Not confident. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for your participation. Bye-bye. Save it for camera.